Welcome to The Blast Zone, the podcast where we dig up the bombs that shook Hollywood and try to find out why they went up in flames. This week, it's after 4 a.m. All of the helicopter pilot bars are closed. This is Miracle Mile. Welcome to The Blast Zone.
Welcome to The Blast Zone.
We are not a podcast about bad movies. We are a podcast about movies that did badly.
That's right.
I'm Jon Drake, in-house film critic of my Letterboxd account.
And I'm Ian Dukes. I'm a person with thoughts and feelings, and some of them are about movies.
Movies like Miracle Mile, which we'll be talking about today. But before we get into that, Ian, how are you doing this week? Are you melting?
A little bit, but I thought about it, and overall, I don't know how I'm doing. I've been too busy this week to find out. I did check off 700 things on my to-do list last week. Literally, that's the actual number. And although that's an accomplishment, I think it might be too many things. So my goal for the next week is to do less and to feel more.
Also, did you complete them or just cross them off your list? Because that's not quite an accomplishment if you were just crossing stuff off.
No, they're all things I did.
Oh, good. Okay.
My life is all in a giant to-do list. Some of them are recurring, repeating daily, weekly. Some are unique stuff, but it's a lot of things. Over 100 a day. It's probably too many things.
Do you have like very minor things on there, like wash my hands?
Some are minor, like brush teeth, and some are pieces of bigger projects. The goal is not to make all the items the same size, but to make them all something that it helps me complete them, to write them down. So no matter what they are, if it's big or small, I put it in a list and then I do it.
Okay, that's not so bad. I think I might take a little page of your playbook. I have severe ADHD, so It's hard for me to get stuff done without the proper motivation. And maybe a list will do it because I'm not getting on Adderall because there's a shortage going on.
Oh yeah, this is not the time. But yeah, come back to me on that. I'll be happy to evangelize about my to-do list strategies. I have strong feelings about it.
Is something on your to-do list about making it less miserably hot?
I haven't tackled that issue.
Do you not have that kind of power?
I'm putting that off.
Yeah. Just going to wait for the fall to do it for you?
Yeah.
Boo. It's been in the 90s for a week. And we have that East Coast humidity.
Oh, yeah.
I'm just like constantly sweating all the time. Starting to get on my nerves.
I bet.
So that's where my head's at this week. I'm just a little annoyed, even though I did really enjoy this week's movie. But we can't get too in-depth on that right now because I got to hear about what you watched this week.
Yeah. So you know me. I love a good thematic topical show and tell. And there is a movie craze sweeping the country right now, July of 2023. So I'm jumping on board. Last week, if listeners remember, I watched the movie that I like to call the Twee Oppenheimer, aka Wes Anderson's Asteroid City. And this week I went for a movie that many people are calling Dark Barbie. It's a colorful Ryan Gosling vehicle called Only God Forgives.
No one has called that Dark Barbie.
It really kind of is that though, man. It's so colorful.
This Ken's job is sex trafficking. He's definitely involved in some shady shit.
Some
in that movie.
dark stuff, man. It's all dark stuff. It's written, directed by Nicholas Winding Refn. It is a violent revenge story that it turns out is a little bit heavier on style than on substance.
You could say that.
The first hour of the movie, half the scenes are dreams or visions of some sort. You don't know what's going on. And the ones that are actual real world stuff, those are also enacted in a highly theatrical way, so they don't seem totally real. But it's incredibly sumptuous to look at. Every shot is like a painting of vivid colors, pools of light and shadow. It's really beautiful to look at. And the content, although it's super brutal and bloody and awful, I found it pretty engrossing to watch. It's like more of a meditation than a movie, but I actually enjoyed it.
I'll tell you what I think about Only God Forgives. I was very excited for this movie when it came out. I didn't catch it in theaters. I don't know if it got a wide release in the States or if it did. I just wasn't in a place to go see it.
Okay.
But that movie is a great trailer. All the things you're pointing out, it's meditative, it's very symbolic, it's colorful. All that stuff makes for a great trailer. And this movie has maybe my favorite trailer of all time.
Okay.
The movie, your mileage may vary, and mine, it did not land squarely in my favorites.
I can see that.
I liked Drive. I liked the Pusher movies, but I don't love any Winding Refn. And I feel like he's been exposed a little bit between Only God Forgives and Too Old to Die Young. I think style over substance is becoming the popular refrain about him.
It's so true in this movie. I haven't seen that show that you're talking about, but somehow I was in a mood to like, oh, I kind of like that this movie, it's only 90 minutes. It doesn't have that much story. It has the flair flavor of a story where you have to concentrate hard to pick up the details of crime relationships and cops and who's calling a hit on who, but you actually don't have to. And you realize that pretty quick. You're like, oh, I don't know, it's just another scene and everything's red or blue and orange and purple and somebody's getting stabbed.
Sometimes whole fight scenes happen in silhouette.
Yeah, it's super cool to look at though. So yeah, if you can turn that part of your mind off, it can be enjoyable. And also turn off the part that's offended by really grotesque, bloody torture. Then you'll be fine.
Yeah.
You'll love it. Not everyone can do that.
I think I'll put the trailer in the show notes in case people want to check that out and see what I'm talking about.
Cool.
It is a really good trailer, but that's where it ends for me.
Sure.
But not for Ian. I also watched something super weird, but something a little newer. I checked out the new Boots Riley Amazon series, I'm a Virgo, which is a comedy, but it's also a little bit of a drama, kind of like I'm Sorry to Bother You, which was his movie with Lakeith Stanfield.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
If you liked I'm Sorry to Bother You, you will like this movie. Like the tone is very much of a companion.
Cool.
It's got that looking at real world issues through an absurdist lens, and trying to almost make light of them, but not undermine them.
Very cool.
It's super interesting. It's about a 13-foot tall, 19-year-old kid raised in Oakland who's basically like a bubble boy, hasn't been allowed to leave the house and interact with people. But he's discovered, and it's basically like a fish out of water story. At least in the first episode. I haven't seen them all, but they dropped them all at once. So all 7 are available.
Nice.
But the cast is great. Jarrell Jerome, who I shouted out just a couple weeks ago for his role in Full Circle, the new Steven Soderbergh miniseries, is the lead playing Cootie. He's popping up everywhere lately, and I'm really impressed with him. He's an actor I'm going to keep an eye on.
I've got to watch this.
Yeah, you got to check this out. But it's also got Mike Epps, Walton Goggins, Elijah Wood, Morgan Fairchild. And then we've even got the voices of Joel Edgerton, our boy.
Really?
Danny Glover and Juliette Lewis in a fictional show. They pop up as voices.
Oh.
I wonder how many people are hearing that and being like, I think that's Joel Edgerton's voice. It's probably nobody except us.
This thing sounds just packed with fun stuff.
Yeah. And I always thought there was a little more meat on the bone for I'm Sorry to Bother You. Like it felt like it wrapped up really fast once it got really weird. So I'm excited to kind of see what he does with the whole show to stretch his wings. Boots Riley's an interesting character.
Yeah.
And check out his band too, The Coup. It's pretty good. So that brings us to Miracle Mile. And in a rare case for Blast Zone, you had seen this movie before and I hadn't.
That's right.
So why don't you give me a rundown of like how you came to find this movie and when?
As I mentioned, I did rent it back in the day and it must have been pretty close. Like I think I got it when it was probably something new in the video store. And my experience then was, man, this is dark. This is really challenging and intense. And coming back to it now, I think I focus more on its weaker points in the story and the execution. But I think there's a good explanation for it, is that at that time, the threat of nuclear war breaking out was really real. And you can see it in the way that the movie's written, the way the characters react. They're like, oh yeah, the war, it's happening. Like, oh yeah, the war that's about to happen any day. Yeah, that's what's going on right now.
Yeah, you really get the vibe that they were all just waiting for this like shoe to drop at some point.
They drop little stuff. The characters, as they're running around scrambling and freaking out, they're going, yeah, I dream about this every night. Little hints that this is the world that people lived in. And I can testify that, yeah, that was the fact. So in that mode where the real life fear was an oppressive thing on top of your head, the cornier aspects of this movie could easily be overlooked and you could see it and go, holy shit, that floored me.
I mentioned last week, the way I discovered this movie was I think I downloaded it to my Plex for somebody and then it just played as a trailer ahead of Inherent Vice. And I was like, oh, this movie looks fucking dope. I want to check it out. And I was like, Anthony Edwards is the lead, a great unsung leading man of the 80s who never really got his fair shake. Everything about it just seemed in my wheelhouse, and watching it, I can say that my instincts were correct. I really dug this movie.
Cool.
I had a lot of fun with it. I watched it twice with no complaints, unlike a lot of the other movies we've been doing recently. And it has its issues. It's a bit of a Shaggy Dog thing. There are like some very specific quirks that it has that we'll have to call out when we start getting into the nitty gritty of it. But I think it does a lot of things well. Specifically, I've often lamented the lack of, we get a lot of post-apocalyptic fiction, but we don't get a lot of mid-apocalyptic fiction.
You've called that out on the show before.
And the movie kind of scratches that itch. Like it doesn't go far enough. This might sound weird, but I feel like it's of a pair with Cloverfield in a lot of ways, because it's taking this like big scale devastation and destruction, but looking at it from a very singular point of view.
Yeah.
Like we're with Harry the entire time pretty much. So everything he knows is all that we know, and we have no other information, and we just have to kind of follow his lead. And that's kind of how Cloverfield handled it too. It was this obviously big scale situation in New York City, but we followed one small group of characters around, so we got information as they got it. And I think it's a fun way to do a disaster movie. movie.
Yeah, I agree. The temptation in Hollywood, especially with bigger budgets, is to zoom out and show the big disaster stuff on screen. And this movie's not really about that. It gives you a little bit of it towards the end in a satisfying way. There's a little bit of chaos in the street, but just a taste of it, really. It really is about these people. And my complaints with it, where I think it fell down, is that I wanted to like these people really badly because I also like Anthony Edwards quite a bit. And Mare Winningham is pretty winning, so to speak. But they did some things with the characters that I felt betrayed what they could have been. We'll get into that when we talk through the plot.
No, I know exactly what you're talking about because we talked about it off mic, and I don't disagree. It's an odd choice.
So that sapped my enjoyment of the film. I still, in general, I love this stuff. Like the name Twilight Zone comes up several times in referencing this movie because it's one of those old school concepts. It's high concept sci-fi and it's talk based, right? The whole first part of it, it's a phone call. It's a faceless voice on the other end of the line, and a man learns some shocking information, and then he has to communicate it to a room full of strangers like a one-act play. And so it starts with that very old school 50s, 60s low budget play or television sci-fi concept. And I think it loses the thread a little bit towards the end, where it succumbs to the temptation of trying to depict too much action on the screen for the budget that it has. And it would have been better staying in that realm of like thinky kind of ending rather than showy ending. I didn't like it as much as you did, but I still love the spirit of it and had a lot of fun in a lot of its moments.
I think along those same lines of what you're saying with how it kind of loses the thread a little bit towards the end when it tries to be an action movie. It also, I think, was a really great ensemble for long stretches, and it kind of becomes a two-hander at some point. And not that the two leads aren't winning, but like yourself, I had soured on their romance a little bit at some point. So I was a little like, I wanted to check in with some other people too.
Maybe that would have helped. I don't know. There's all kind of great themes. It's one of those what ifs that really does suck you in. You go, what would I do if I knew that the bombs were dropping? It's the premise of that whole genre of Twitter memes of what do you do when this thing happens?
And the answer is always vote.
That's the one thing they didn't do. Kind of disappointing.
If this happened in real life, I kind of know how it would go, unfortunately. Just reading the top replies to a tweet about it, you'd think it was all made up.
That's another thing that's old-fashioned about it, is they got this written, and it might have taken a while to get to the screen, but it got made just before technology broke every concept in this.
Yeah.
Right? We'll get to that. But it's definitely one of those things where so much of sci-fi, thrillers, horror have now been ruined by the communications revolution. And this movie is still anchored in a lot of the limitations of that era.
Yeah. If you're writing a script like this today, you have to be like, oh no, like after we got the phone call, an EMP went off and knocked out all our electronics or something. There's always that plot point now because it's a lot less tense when you can just call anyone you want at any time or look up anything on the internet at any time. And not that everything you'll find is accurate, but like at least you're tethered to the world at all times.
Yeah.
You hinted at the movie taking a while to make it to the screen. So should I give everyone the background on that?
Yeah. Let's hear how this thing happened.
All right. Steve Jarnatt graduated from the American Film Institute in the late 70s and immediately started working on a script for a movie called Miracle Mile, about a nuclear panic in Los Angeles and whether or not it's legitimate or just mass hysteria. He wrote the script for Warner Brothers and was hoping to direct it, but the studio wanted to make it on a larger scale with a more well-known director, and so the script languished. It was chosen by magazine American Film as one of the 10 best unmade screenplays in Hollywood in 1983, a list that would later become known as the Blacklist.
You know what else from 1983 would later become known as the Blacklist? James Spader.
The film would sit idle for 3 more years until Jarnatt optioned it himself, purchasing the rights for $25,000. He gave the script a quick rewrite, and Warner Brothers wanted to buy it back, offering him $400,000 for it, but he declined. British film producer John Daly of Hemdale Films secured a $3.7 million budget for the movie, and Jarnatt was on his way. Casting for the lead role of Harry was its own challenge, as both Nicolas Cage and Kurt Russell had agreed to be in the film close to production starting, but had to be recast due to scheduling conflicts.
Kurt Russell's like, I got no time to be in a movie where the whole plot is to escape from LA.
Anthony Edwards, at the time best known as Goose in Top Gun, was given the lead role and filming was ready to begin in Los Angeles. Principal photography began on May 23, 1987, with Johnny's Coffee Shop, the La Brea Tar Pits, Park La Brea, Miracle Mile, and the Santa Monica Pier among the locations used. The film was released on May 19, 1989, and despite overwhelmingly positive reviews, the movie was mostly ignored by audiences. It never cracked the top 10, only making $1.1 million total at the box office. And unlike many of the movies we cover, it has failed to develop a true cult following, despite maintaining a reputation as an underrated gem of the 80s.
I wonder why that is, because I have my problems with it, but I think especially given how topical and meaningful this was, I wonder why it just kind of never really caught on.
Yeah, it's got all the makings of a cult classic too. And I think of a movie that I consider not necessarily a twin movie like we've discussed in the past, but a movie that I feel closely parallels this movie's sense of like panic is They Live, the John Carpenter and Roddy Piper movie.
Okay.
And that one just snowballed to a point where it's almost universally beloved. And I think this movie's actually a lot better than They Live.
Yeah, I haven't gone back to They Live since that time. I should give that a watch.
Yeah, you know we love our John Carpenter here.
Yeah, that had a certain comedy element to it that this movie doesn't have. This movie is pretty serious, although maybe would you argue otherwise?
I think this movie is funny at times on purpose, and it's also funny at times by accident because it's the 80s and you just can't help it. We're going to find certain things funny, like the outfits at the gym. There's no way around it, the hairdos. But They Live is definitely a sillier movie, I think, than this one. I don't know why. I just, every time I was watching this, it kept popping into mind.
Interesting. Yeah, I was talking to you off air about something about this movie, intangible and hard for me to even nail down, but I noticed that all our notes that we were making tended to be about the details of the plot, small stuff. But I'm like, oh, why are we all in the weeds about this stuff? And I'm like, you know what, for a movie that starts out very high concept and seems like it's about big things, love and death, basically, total annihilation, it actually seems to like get stuck in the weeds. It seems like everything about it is small plot details. The characters aren't really evolving. Their relationship doesn't really evolve. Maybe that's the problem that I have with it. So it doesn't feel like there are really that many big things to tackle. So we mostly spend our time going, this didn't make sense or this was weird.
I found myself frustrated by the constant need. We got to stop one more place first, and then we'll be on our way to the helipad. Because like the helipad's right there, man. Like we could see it. At one point, he's pushing a shopping cart across a park with Julie in it, and I'm like,
Yeah.
it's right there, man.
It's
like,
right there.
Just get there.
Yeah.
But there's always obstacles, and it felt like machinations, you know?
I totally agree with that. And maybe that's more of the like stretching out the Twilight Zone episode concept into feature length, as they ended up having to just mechanically put them through more jeopardy. They make some bad decisions like, well, let's split up again. LA's descending into chaos, but you better go that way and I better go this way for the next 10 minutes just because.
We have no way of knowing where the other one is, but we'll find each other again amongst this chaos.
There's some of that. And it feels like, why are you doing that?
That's fair. And it's funny, you've brought up the Twilight Zone a couple times now. I think it's time we drop some knowledge on the listeners that this movie took so long to get into production as its own feature film that it was almost just used as one of the vignettes in the 1983 Twilight Zone movie. And it's perfectly suited for that type of usage.
Yes.
Like I said, I like it very much as a standalone movie, but it's got that feel to it that it could have been a short film in a Twilight Zone movie.
And maybe it would have been a little better. Yeah.
Do you want to start walking through the plot so we can see what our detail-oriented complaints are?
Yeah, we've already teased a lot of this stuff. Let me jump on into the details. A jazz musician named Harry, played by Anthony Edwards, is visiting LA, and he finds that he has a day to kill in the Miracle Mile district. While checking out the La Brea tar pits, he meets a girl named Julie, played by Mare Winningham. They spend an afternoon together, go to the beach, and fall completely in love. Julie even introduces Harry to her grandma, who she lives with, and her grandpa, who lives nearby, since the old couple has been estranged for years. Then Harry makes a date to meet Julie that night, at midnight, when she gets off work at Johnny's coffee shop. But when the power in Harry's hotel goes out, he oversleeps his nap. By the time he wakes up and gets to Johnny's, it's 4 a.m., and Julie has long since taken a Valium and gone to bed. There at the coffee shop, he meets a cast of oddball late-night regulars and then steps outside to the phone booth to try to call Julie, but he has to settle for leaving an apology on her answering machine. Then, moments after he hangs up, the payphone starts to ring.
Bum, bum.
Left kind of cliffhanger there. Normally, I might stick the call and the real inciting incident of the movie in the first act, but I feel like we can't start talking about that with then talking about immediately what happens next. So I'm like, okay, there's definitely this love story rom-com section of the movie up top. So I figured we could talk about that first.
And the movie really wants you to connect with this love story because it kind of anchors the rest of the movie. If you don't buy into this, then the stakes of what else is going on, are obviously still very high for humanity, but you might not care.
Exactly.
But let's start with Harry because he's our guy. We're with him for the entire movie. And in this early section, like he's a real character.
Yeah.
He's not like a stoic leading man. He's a jokester.
He's Southern California's leading Glenn Miller jazz trombone impersonator or something like that. It's not actually clear. I watched it and I thought I understood what the setup was, who he was and why he was there. And then I read some other people try to write synopses like on IMDb and Wikipedia. Some of those people had very different ideas. They're like, Harry lives in LA and Miracle Mile. I'm like, they don't really say it, but he's staying in a hotel. He doesn't live here. He seems to be a traveling big band guy.
He doesn't have any friends in the area except for Julie, which like he doesn't know anybody at the coffee shop.
It's not his place.
I thought it was clear that he's visiting.
And that explains why he'd be wandering a museum in the middle of the afternoon, because he's here for the day and he had his concert and he's got time to kill. Doesn't explain what Julie's doing there. She lives 3 blocks from this museum. Why is she buying stuff in the gift shop on a random afternoon?
I was with it until the gift shop. If you live that close to a museum, you're never buying anything there.
I go buy a dinosaur tooth on Tuesday afternoon.
You got like groceries to buy and shit. You're not on vacation. Get it together, Julie. But she's just like walking around sketching, I think, or she's writing something in a notebook.
It did look like she had a notebook for some of it. It's almost like the movie's faking you out, or it didn't really know and it just wanted to do some like rom-com imagery of a guy and a girl in a museum bumping into each other and charming each other without talking, which it does a good job of. But yeah, sometimes you're like, oh, she's the teacher. She's with these kids. And then the kids walk away.
That's what I thought for a long time. Yeah.
like, no, those aren't her kids.
And then like somebody in silhouette walks by and admonishes Harry for being like a wise ass to the field trip, but they don't show who says it. So I thought it was her.
Yeah. But it's
some
not,
lady
right?
walks by and she's just like, this is my field trip, young man. And I was like, oh, I thought they were vibing, but then you never see her face. And I'm like, wait, that wasn't her?
That must have been the actual teacher.
But she had kind of a Mare Winningham hairstyle based on her silhouette. So it was confusing.
There's a lot of stuff that's ambiguous about the setup, but like you get what they're doing. And then it leaves no doubt. They go to the beach. They're tossing lobsters off the pier that they rescued from a seafood restaurant.
That was cute.
It's like,
I thought that was funny.
It's cute. They're very charming actors, both of them. So it's okay. We're on board. We're with you. We see what you're trying to do here.
Let's get this tidbit out of the way because this is one of my favorite tidbits I've been able to drop in a movie ever. Is that Anthony Edwards and Mare Winningham were both married to other people when this movie was made and for many years after. They eloped in 2021, the year of our Lord.
My goodness.
More than 30 years after this movie was made, they got back together, reunited, and got married. Isn't that cool?
Yes, during the pandemic.
Good for them. They found love in a hopeless place.
Talk about a love story. That's way better than throwing lobsters off the Santa Monica Pier. That is special.
It is special. And to go back to the museum, I know she was probably sketching in that notebook, but I think it'd be even funnier if she was just like writing down what she saw. Like you would get a glimpse of the notebook and it's like coyote. Stuffed ? And then, like, I don't know.
A woman who has questions about her neighborhood, so she just walks around and writes them down.
But she thinks the museum is just part of the neighborhood. She's like, this house is weird. I don't know. I'm getting absurd with it. But I do think it was smart to make Harry as carefree and silly as he is. It helps sell his descent into panic that we get in a few minutes.
Yeah, it's a nice contrast. He's not like a hard-edged hero. He's like a funny boy who's kind of knows that he's living his life in a sort of arrested state. Just the fact that he's wearing that suit and carrying a trombone around LA. Speaking of the other quirky rom-com stuff, they meet these funny grandparents, the grandpa.
Irvin?
Is it Irvin or is it
Ivan? Sorry. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Ivan. I didn't spend a lot of time learning their names. I somehow did not find them too appealing. He's really into stopping for tube steaks. He wants to buy Harry some tube steaks.
Don't like that term. I had to Google what it was. It's just a hot dog.
Yeah. My friends and I used to make each other laugh by calling hot dogs tube steaks. It's an old school thing.
I wonder if it's like a West Coast thing because I've never heard it. I've heard the terms tube steaks before, but I didn't realize that we were referring to hot dogs when we said it.
I think I got it from somebody's dad. I feel like it might have come from a Midwest dad.
Okay. Speaking of educational things, as the LA native, Park La Brea is interesting to me. Is that a neighborhood or like an apartment complex?
It's an apartment complex so big that it's practically a neighborhood.
So like Co-op City in New York would be the equivalent, I guess you could say.
I don't know that, but I feel like New York has things that resemble that, like a set
or Stuytown
of high rises. Yeah, it's like I read about it to see exactly how big it is, but you get to this part of LA and there's big boulevards bounding it on all sides, but in the middle of it are these 15-story high rises, and there's a bunch of them. There's 10 or 15 of them, and they have little hub and spoke roads, little tiny roads leading to them. So it's almost like a gated community of these high rises, but it really stands out. Like when I first realized what it was and that it was there, I'm like, can you do that? What is that? Why you can't just build your own little neighborhood with a bunch of towers in it, but that's what it is.
And is it considered like upscale?
I think it kind of is. Even at the time, obviously they were showing old people living there. I think it kind of has that quality to it. At some point when it was built, it was probably snazzy high-rise apartments, but it's turned into probably old people.
Well, yeah, you don't have to mow your lawn. They take care of the amenities and all this stuff for you.
But yeah, so can we get into the geography? Because this movie is all about...
Yeah, this movie's obsessed with...
all about LA geography. And to me, I'm like, hold on, is this a first-time screenwriter that someone told him, write what you know? And he's like, I'm going to drop every name of every place in my neighborhood. And
he's not from LA, though.
He's not?
He's from Washington State.
Okay.
But I don't know if he might have lived in LA for years by the time he wrote this, but it almost feels, and this is from someone who's never even visited LA, but like somebody looking at a map and being like, all right, here, I'm gonna name drop this place. And like, he's got the Zagat book of the restaurants. And he's like, all right, here, what are some famous restaurants in this neighborhood?
It feels really obvious, right? Starting with the title of the movie. The movie could have a conceptual title about the phone call or the big one. It could be anything about the concept. It's about the neighborhood, which it all kind of takes place in this neighborhood, but the neighborhood doesn't really have its own character that influences the story of the movie.
Yeah.
Except that they're just there. So it starts from that. And then, man.
But that's kind of true. That's kind of true to life, right? Miracle Mile isn't a super distinct neighborhood.
It's more well known than a lot of neighborhoods. I don't know if this is true in other cities, but you drive around the city and there'll be those little city signs every couple miles that announce a neighborhood. And you're like, I didn't know this area was called that. But Miracle Mile is one that you kind of do know, or at least I did.
But that's not really your part of LA either, right?
It's not. It's in the middle of the city. It's in the part of Wilshire Boulevard when LA grew out of its downtown and extended to the west. They started building nicer things out in that direction for people who wanted to get out of downtown. And so there's a lot of the, like, from some heyday of LA, then when they started building big Art Deco department stores and residential buildings and stuff along Wilshire Boulevard, that's kind of this part of town. So it has an old school flavor. That May Company building is one of famous landmarks in LA. That style is not called Art Deco. It's called Streamlined Moderne, I think, but it's old-timey, flashy architecture. It has some character to it, but why did he have to name things like the specific address of the building that the helipad's on? That's real. Why are there real things in this movie? There's
real phone numbers.
Yes. They didn't disguise it.
Area code and all.
It's 100% real. The Johnny's coffee shop was a real place. It's no longer operating, but the building's still there. But that was open at the time.
They should have had a voicemail from Chip's dad play when you call the... No, that wouldn't have worked.
And in the coffee shop, she calls it Hoggly Woggly's. I said Dr. Hoggly Woggly's Tyler, Texas Barbecue in Panorama City. Name dropped in the movie. It's a real place. I've eaten their barbecue. I don't remember. It was a long time ago, but...
It's tops according to the movie, so...
That's true. But there's something that makes it feel slightly amateur for that reason, because I'm like, why is it in movies that they always fake it and they do a sound alike? Okay, if there's a famous apartment building, they do a sound alike name for it. If there's a phone number, they put 555. They rename neighborhoods.
Right.
Like, why does this movie use only literal places and real addresses? Is that just something nobody thought to do, or something the director didn't know why real movies don't do? Because I don't know. I don't know why they don't.
It does get off-putting after a while. Like when they get the news, not to jump ahead too much, but everybody's like the cooks, like, I'm going to the San Gabriel Mountains. This other guy's, I'm going to Big Bear.
Yeah.
Everyone's got their exit strategy and they have to name drop specifically where they're going.
Yeah.
My family's got a cabin up at 3801 Mountain Drive in Big Bear. I'm heading there.
Totally. And there's one sequence where in the coffee shop, they're talking about that barbecue place, and she and the businessman are trying to argue about how do you get there. And it's a full-on episode of the Californian sketch from SNL where they're like, here's the Golden State Freeway and you take the Ventura, here's the 101. And then this, no, how'd you get there? Oh yeah, this is the harbor. Then we took Santa Monica to the 405.
Get off at La Brea. What are you doing here? Sorry, I love the Californians.
It's great. It's great. But this movie predicted it. Like, they literally went out. You could have an argument about, like, where's this weird barbecue joint you're telling me about? They took the time to put in lines that mentioned no fewer than 6 LA freeways by name.
See, that might be a nitpick for you, but as someone who's never visited LA, it made me respect the Californian sketch that much more. Because I'm like, oh shit, like people in LA really do talk like this.
They really do. I guess it's been going on since the 80s.
Well, when your traffic is that bad, you need to have like your own special route, you know?
I get it. I'm like that. I've been called out for doing that same thing accidentally. You just start talking about ways to get around.
My thing with driving and traffic, and I think New York traffic and LA traffic are different in some ways, but the same standard applies, is that I would rather drive 3 hours and be moving the entire time than drive 2.5 hours in traffic.
Interesting.
So I wish like they would have a setting on GPS, avoid traffic as much as possible, but they don't have that yet.
Minimum speed. Keep me cruising.
Like, I don't care if it's local streets. I don't care if it's out of the way, more miles, more tolls. I just fucking hate traffic.
I feel that. I get that cramp in the front of my calf. And once that starts to tighten up, I go insane because you can't relieve it till you're done.
And you can't use cruise control in these LA streets. That's not practical.
I think the latest cars have that stop and go cruise control that actually works at all speeds, but my car does not have that.
They also shut your car off when you're stopped.
Yeah, that's disconcerting too.
I don't like that. It freaks me out when I'm like in a rental or something.
Yeah.
It does that. I'm going to request
because it's the surprise when you take your foot off the brake and the car starts. You're like, what the fuck?
But is there anything else from this section, or are we ready to move on?
Let's move on. There's plenty of details to get into in the second act.
Yeah. We're just like, they talk about restaurants too much, but now we're like getting into the real nitty gritty of the story.
The real stuff.
The payphone outside the diner rings and Harry picks up. It's a panicked young military man who dialed a wrong number. Thinking he's called his dad, the guy proceeds to tell Harry that U.S. missiles are locked and loaded for a full nuclear exchange with Russia, starting in about an hour. Harry goes inside to tell the Johnny's crew, who don't believe him, until a connected businesswoman named Landa starts to confirm some of the details. So the group from the diner all pile into a catering truck and head for the airport while Landa arranges for transportation on her cell phone. But Harry jumps off the truck in order to go back and get Julie. He's then picked up by a young man named Wilson, played by Mykelti Williamson, who he convinces to help him at gunpoint. After a harrowing run-in with the cops that ends in a gas station exploding, Harry makes it to Julie's apartment complex while Wilson goes off to try to find his sister. Harry explains to Julie's grandma and grandpa that the world is ending, which causes them to forget the rift between them. But he keeps it a secret from Julie, so she doesn't understand why they suddenly reunited and went for breakfast. Then he takes Julie to a helipad at the top of the Mutual Benefit Life Building, a nearby skyscraper where Landa has arranged for a helicopter to pick up some friends and colleagues. But when Julie arrives and sees the others prepping for escape, she finds out the shocking truth. Now, that Mutual Benefit Life Building, that wouldn't happen to be the one at 5900 Wilshire, would it?
It is.
What are the odds?
If you were taking notes, you could Google map your way right there as soon as the movie ended.
Still there, I presume?
I think it's still there. I don't think Mutual Benefit Life is the name holder anymore. But speaking of the real life stuff, the Johnny's is still there on that corner. It gets used as movie locations. It got used as Bernie campaign headquarters in LA.
Oh, so it's not like a working restaurant?
It's not a working restaurant, but the facade still looks decent. They've kept it up and it gets
That's cool.
used from time to time.
Let's talk about the phone call a little bit.
Yeah.
How did you think it was played? Do you think the actor playing Chip on the phone was good? A little too squeaky, maybe?
Yeah, it's kind of heightened, but it works for what I think it is, which is that 50s, 60s style drama. It works. I feel like Anthony Edwards' acting is kind of, I don't know, it feels kind of not totally formed. Like I think of him as a stronger actor than I thought he came across in this movie.
Really?
Some of the moments I feel like he really sells, but some of them I feel like, I don't know, slightly like cheesy versions, local theater versions of this drama playing out, whereas some of these moments are truly shit your pants stuff. And I'm like, I didn't feel like any of these characters were really shitting their pants. I don't know.
Yeah, the one character who I feel is playing it super heightened is Fred the cook, but that makes the Anthony Edwards kind of blasé attitude about things stand out more, because Fred the cook literally jumps up on the counter, pulls a gun in his face, and is like, shut the fuck up.
Yes.
And then Anthony Edwards is just like, well, man, take it easy.
Yeah. Yes.
And then even like he pulls a gun on him when he's driving away from the diner. And he's like, fuck you.
Fuck you. Yeah. No, that man put his whole heart into that role. And I love him for it because it does stand out.
So good. He's killing it.
He really saves that scene. Denise Crosby plays Landa, the very strange power player woman who helps engineer their...
She's a powerful woman in the 80s because she has short blonde hair and a teal blue pantsuit.
Man, she's got everything going for her except a car. She's a regular at the diner. So she walks in and the cook immediately recognizes her. Here's your coffee. He switches the TV over to a channel, which is the Russian stock market tickers. Like it's just numbers and symbols on a screen, but it's not Latin character set.
Fred, turn on my hieroglyphics I like to look at so much.
It's absolutely hieroglyphics. And then to prove that she is a brainiac, as she's skimming the Russian stock market, she's also speed reading the Cliff's Notes of Thomas Pynchon's Gravity's Rainbow.
Pynchon doesn't seem like the type of author where you gain a lot from reading the Cliff Notes. It's about the journey, isn't it?
It's probably about the actual text, yes.
She have a fucking book report due?
She's played almost seriously as a brainiac, knower of all things kind of character. That's almost undercuts her as a joke on her that she's cheating on the Pynchon doing the Cliff's Notes.
It could be a smart play on like she's trying to appear smarter than she is, more important than she is. It could also be like a dumb guy's idea of a smart lady.
Yes, it could go either way.
You know, like either one is believable. Just like the way all the location listing is kind of like someone who's not from LA's idea of what people from LA talk like.
Yeah, it's totally. But she's really good. Like whatever weird silliness is in this character, Denise Crosby has this innate imperiousness that you're just like, all right, let's go with it. We got to listen to whatever the fuck she's saying right now.
Yeah, I'm a little ashamed to admit I don't know a lot of her other roles, but I did think she was winning in this.
I know her from her one Star Trek TV show, and that was it.
Oh, God, she is on that Star Trek TV show. I knew she looked familiar.
Yeah, which one is that? Deep Space Nine? I forgot now.
She was The Next Generation.
Oh, okay. So that's even further back than I thought. It makes sense,
that was the one I actually watched the most of.
So she's like certainly a person you would follow. If you were stuck in this premise in the 80s, she's got the only cell phone in the whole part of the city. So like she's the only one who can tell them what the hell's going on. You follow her. But this gang of diners, they're a pretty bonded group. Like you get the idea that they're regulars.
Yeah.
But they all jump in the same truck. Like they just found out the world is ending. And this motley crew, like you said, is just like, we're in it together. Get in the catering van and we're going.
Yeah. But they don't want to wait 30 seconds for the beloved Julie, who Fred's look, I love her too, but fuck her. She's dead.
Wait, what about, can we just stop? He won't even slow down for her.
To let him out the back.
To let the guy jump off the truck without killing himself. He's like, best I can do is I'm about to get on this freeway on-ramp, and it's kind of tight, so I'm going to go less than 35. This is your chance if you're going to jump. And he does.
He does, and he loses his gun, but then finds it again. One of the moments I thought was really funny intentionally in this movie was having the 4 a.m. diner crew putting together a list of the great thinkers in the world for Landa, for people that they should try to save. And I was able to find the list.
Oh.
So the waitress says Pat Riley,
Okay.
which 1988 in LA, sure. He's a popular character at the time. But then Mike, who is maybe the street sweeper, or like maybe the street sweeper is just Buddy.
Some other kind of blue-collar worker.
He starts coming out with Linus Pauling, Jane and Tom. I don't know. Goodall?
Jane and Tom is probably Tom Brokaw and Jane, what's her name, who were the hosts of the Today Show at the time.
Oh, interesting. Okay. That actually makes sense. Harry Belafonte.
Good choice.
Not Joyce Brothers. Fuck Joyce Brothers, according to Mike. Danny Berrigan, Bobby Seale, Dick Gregory. I don't know who some of these people are. I know who Bobby Seale is.
I remember Dick Gregory, comedian and civil rights activist. I mean, Harry Belafonte, entertainer and civil rights activist.
Oh, yeah. This guy was very progressive because
this is a pretty woke list.
Bobby Seale was one of the Chicago 8.
Wow, this list is deeper than we thought.
Yeah, he was the guy who got split off from the rest of the Chicago, which became the Chicago 7. It was originally the Chicago 8.
Oh, wild.
So, yeah, this guy's very progressive. Good for him.
Yeah.
Mike. But then the waitress deadpans at the end of this list with, do you have these people's phone number?
The whole thing is ridiculous, but it's only because Landa is barking orders at everyone what to do. And she's like, make a list of the greatest thinkers, scientists, the people that she tells to do that. That's the part where the movie, I hope he's being intentionally funny because it is.
I think so.
It's a funny bit.
I've just read up on him a little bit, and he has Steve J. Jarnatt, and he has his own website, and he seems like a funny dude, and he doesn't take himself too seriously. So I would guess that he was doing that on purpose. So then we get to Wilson, played by the great Mykelti Williamson, just a favorite of mine. You would probably know him best as Bubba from Forrest Gump. He was also one of Pacino's crew, the cops in Heat.
Yes.
But in my opinion, his greatest role is as barbecue chef extraordinaire / criminal mastermind Elston Limehouse in Justified. And that's our Justified crossover of the week.
Justified crossover of the week.
Oh, dang.
He is a banker for the criminal element in Harlan County. He is a information broker, a damn good barbecue chef, we can gather. I don't know how he holds up to Pogly Woglies. And they did such a great job of like I sent you the introduction for his character on Justified. He's obviously a lot older. He's heavier. His voice has gone down like 10 octaves since he was young, but they really nailed his introduction as a character. Whether or not the rest of his arc lives up to the introduction is a topic of some debate in the Justified community.
I see. But he makes a great impression. Very intimidating, strong, scary villain type.
But he's great in this too. Like I've never seen Mykelti Williamson give a bad performance.
I really liked him. You're kind of searching, or at least I was searching for characters with heart, like the cook. And then Mykelti pops up. This character is pretty lighthearted. He's like, don't hurt me, man. Take the stereos. I got the Nakamichi. I got the Sony.
First, he slams on his brakes and does a little drift turn, and his trunk just accidentally pops open, revealing all the stereos, which was a very funny moment.
That was a good moment. That was really well engineered as far as like the filmmaking to do that character reveal in the action was excellent. And then he's funny, and you're like, oh, I like this guy. He handles Harry, who's having a pretty bad moment, and he handles him very nicely. And they form not a friendship, but kind of a bond.
Yeah, like it's an alliance. But a little more than just an alliance. They're not just here to help each other get to the helicopter landing pad. They're kind of a support system for each other.
Yeah, and they bond in this really fun scene at the gas station. They get into some trouble when they realize they don't have enough gas. They're going to have to pull over in order to do their mission, and shit goes sideways. And to me, this is the most fun. You know, movies have the setup, something crazy is established, and then it's fun and games time. Like what happens in this world where this thing has been set off. This is the first thing where it really gets wild, and it gets wild for me in a really fun way.
So it's a cab gas station. So that's not a place you could just pull into and get gas for your passenger car. They're in a hurry. I don't know if that area of LA is loaded with gas stations. If it's not, you got to do what you got to do.
Yeah.
And the clerk is a surly type. He's got a sawed-off shotgun that he just brandishes for no good reason at Mykelti, even though Harry's the crazy one with a gun. He's black. He's probably the threat, according to this gas station attendant. And then he's trying to get gas. The guy's basically extorting them, saying it'll cost you $70 for $20 worth of gas. And the cops show up, and Wilson, the Mykelti Williamson character, in a moment of clarity or panic, I can't say which, decides just, hey, this is escalating. I don't know what to do. I'm just going to douse these cops in gasoline and try to make a run for it.
Just going to squirt them. Play a little squirt with the old gas in the face of the two cops. And then they kind of make it so that the cops bring their demise on themselves, because the female cop, once she's squirted with gas, fires her gun in the air, which is what ignites the gasoline, regrettably. horribly.
Right. The gunpowder exploding ignites the gasoline, which not the smartest move on her part to start. First of all, why are you just shooting your gun in the air?
This was the 80s. We're still in that old-fashioned like cowboy style. It's the second character or the third character to shoot a gun in the air just to sort of get people's attention.
Yeah, I'm talking. I have the talking gun.
And yeah, it ends badly for her. She catches right on fire. And then, of course, the fire leaks to the hose and the whole place goes up as they drive away in the cop car.
You could see like a good chunk of the film's budget went to this sequence, and it shows like it's practical effects, really well done.
And then, yeah.
Cool scene. And now like 2 cops are dead, so the stakes are even higher. Now it's a real race against the clock till the reinforcements come and apprehend them.
And I think we want to know, this is a world where we just got this piece of information, the world is ending. And what's the implication of that? Anything goes. You could kill cops if you need to get from A to B on time. And so this is like, oh yeah, it's getting real.
Yeah. And then when he gets Julie back to the building, we have to talk about one of your big problems with this movie, and something that once you brought it up to me, I kind of, not that I soured on the movie, but I saw your point. So why don't you have the honor of...
So this thing happened. So like, he's being a hero. He's like, I can't just waltz out of town. I've got to try to rescue Julie because that's the only thing meaningful in my life, even though I just met her. He goes back there, wakes her up, tells grandma and grandpa, which lets them get back together. But for some reason, he goes, let's see, what does he say? He tells grandma and grandpa, she doesn't know yet, and I don't think she should. Now, she's coming out of a Valium haze. So there's this plot point where it's like,
yeah, she's a little loopy.
She's loopy. He's pushing her in a shopping cart at first while they're trying to wake her up. It's okay. Maybe you shouldn't wake her up by shouting, the bombs are falling in her face. I get that, but she's already come around. The grandparents have said, you know what? We're not coming with you. We're just going to spend our last hour having breakfast at Canner's Famous Deli, 832 North Fairfax Avenue in Los Angeles, California. Write it down.
And you've had Canner's as well, right?
Yeah, I've had more Canner's than I have Hoagly Woglies or whatever.
I do love a fucking pastrami sandwich.
It's sort of the iconic Jewish deli in LA. So that makes sense to call that one out. I didn't have too much of a problem with that. But what I did have a problem with was he just stole her chance to say goodbye to her grandparents that raised her. That's the only family she has. And
she keeps asking to go back and, have breakfast with them instead of do this brunch date that he wants to take her on. So that's like another layer of kind of cruelty in his decision that like, she's not like excited about the brunch anymore. She wants to go with her grandparents.
Yeah. She thinks they're going on a hot air balloon ride. And the script tries to make it not his fault because he never tells anybody a straight out lie. Like he doesn't tell the Wilson character that it's a meltdown. He lets him come up with that thought on his own and he sort of like doesn't deny it. And he doesn't ever tell her that they're going on a balloon ride. She goes, I bet you're taking me on a hot air balloon ride. And he doesn't deny it. But like, it's kind of half-assed. Like he's really deceiving her. He's just separated her from her grandparents. And it's like, come on, bro. I can totally buy that your love affair is real, but you've known this girl for 8 hours. Like you don't really know her. You're not more important in her life than the family that raised her. So why was it your decision to take her away from them and have her end her life with you or possibly escape with you? But they know that the odds aren't with them. And then she's been deceived in this horrible way. When she finds out, she kind of has no reaction to it. So that to me soured both those characters. Like he's making numbskull level decisions. She's going along with them in a dopey kind of way. I'm like, I just lost a lot of faith in following these characters.
Respect for both of them too.
Yeah.
More hairy, but like you said, her reaction is super surprising and underwhelming.
And it gets to another thing that I think is even like you can excuse sometimes plot mechanics make characters do weird things that aren't properly motivated. And you go, but I still like them overall. But the thing that I think drained it for me is that they didn't use this second half of the movie to bond them because it raises this question, right? You go, these kids just had a whirlwind afternoon. They just did fun things in the sun and the beach and they think they're in love. Now it's being tested. Shit got really real. They're in the worst crisis moment of their lives. Do they learn more about each other through the tough decisions that they make separately or together or that actually bonds them and go, oh my God, we thought this was a fling, but actually this is perfect. And even though the world is ending, we learned something great about ourselves. But instead of doing that, they do dumber and dumber things. And like the romance is kind of missing from the second half of the film. It's just assumed.
Yeah, they're confident that they laid down enough of a foundation in the first act. Your mileage, once again, will vary on whether or not that's true.
Yeah, like it feels like a missed opportunity. If you could have figured out some hard things that they did together and faced a challenge, overcame it, but their only challenge is just like finding each other in angry crowds.
Speaking of finding each other in angry crowds, do you want to walk us through the end of the movie?
Sure. Elbows out. Here we go. Atop the mutual benefit building, Harry realizes that they have a chopper, but no pilot. So he tells Julie, stay there while he goes looking for a pilot. Surprisingly, he finds a helicopter pilot at a 24-hour gym and makes a deal to meet him back at the helipad. Meanwhile, Julie has come down from the building and she's also searching the streets for a pilot. So Harry and Julie find each other just in time to spot Wilson and his sister crashing their car into a department store while fleeing from the police. Unfortunately, Wilson Wilson and his sister die from their injuries, and Harry and Julie barely escape a SWAT showdown when the cops suddenly pack up and flee the scene. Turns out that word has started to spread that a nuclear war is underway and chaos breaks out in the streets of LA. Harry and Julie split up again and run into more trouble, but manage to reunite again in the mutual benefit building elevator. But as they ride up, a distant explosion shakes the building, and when they get to the top, the chopper is gone. But the pilot, true to his word, comes back to pick them up. But just as they try to escape, more missiles detonate, causing the chopper to crash down into the La Brea tar pits. Harry and Julie profess their eternal love as they sink below the tar, and one more blast finishes the job and the movie.
So it was real.
It was real.
I was starting to come down on that side towards the end anyway, but the movie does not keep it ambiguous.
No, I meant to put that in there, that there was a moment when they split up where he goes back to the original payphone, and because he knows the actual number, because it was the same number as the payphone, but it had a different area code, he's able to call the dad. And I was kind of waiting. I'm like, oh, he could call the dad. And that was fun for me that he does close the loop on that. And that's where you finally realize, oh no, it could not have been a prank or any kind of misunderstanding. It was real.
I do like that they address that with him. It's a minute-long scene, but it does so much of the heavy lifting to make us feel like Harry is at least trying to get to the bottom of this.
Yeah, and like I said, it's nice that they kept that ball in the air that long. It's pretty late in the film where you have this like little sliver of hope. Oh, wait, that's right. What if it was a prank and everyone's going crazy for no reason? And then you go, oh, it wasn't. It's a nice turn.
Smart to give us a definitive answer. The movie would have worked well, too, with just that kind of ambiguous thing that honestly I was expecting.
Yes.
Just like the way the movie was unfolding and everything, I was like, they're not going to tell us if it's real or not. They're gonna leave us hanging. And then I was pleasantly surprised when the movie actually comes down on one side. And I don't know if I would have preferred one over the other.
Yeah.
I'm just kind of glad it picked one.
It picks one pretty hard in the end, almost too hard. I think we can get to that. But let's talk about Wilson's end. We were saying he's almost like a comic relief, a fun, lovable character when we meet him.
Yeah.
And the next time he's not. He is brought to a dramatic, unnecessary end by the LAPD. Sorry to say.
Not an unheard of story, to be sure, but still a sad one.
Yeah.
He finds his sister, but tragically is not able to get away. And the anguish he feels when his sister dies, and he's basically begging Harry to kill him. It's a dark fucking scene.
Yeah, that was super dark. There's a real moment where you're thinking, oh shit, he's literally asking Harry to mercy kill him and put him out of his misery.
And Harry's kind of thinking about doing it.
It's like, fuck, that was good.
He owes him that much. If that's really what he wants, you got him into this mess. He would have died anyway. We come to find out if he hadn't gotten dragged into this mess. So I guess it's not that bad, but still.
Lucky for Harry, he didn't have to pull that trigger. The guy croaked 10 seconds later.
And then I thought another cool scene was the cops running away.
Yeah.
Like they get some information over their police scanner and just fucking run away. And you don't get the sense that they're running towards the chaos on Wilshire.
No, they're just
they're hightailing it to home, get their family in the car.
Exactly. Because they leave one guy.
The guy who's rappelling from the building.
Yeah, they're like, where's the cops? And one cop got left behind. He falls down in front of them and runs off to try to catch the SWAT van. It's good. That's a good sci-fi movie moment. That was definitely one of the strong parts.
And it solves a pretty big problem for our heroes, because I was watching that like, how are they going to get out of this? And then I was like, that's the most logical thing. Police running away from danger.
It was believable. And there's one other moment as the chaos breaks out. Like I liked the shots of Wilshire Boulevard when it starts to get crazy and people are starting to run around and traffic's building up as the sun is coming up. And then there's one shot when he gets back to the coffee shop to use the payphone and he looks inside and there's a coyote eating some food off the floor.
And an elderly person like playing with the flowers he had brought for Julie originally.
Yeah, that's a cool moment. There's some strong stuff that's endeared me to this movie.
I love a coyote where it's not supposed to be.
Yeah.
You know?
That's very LA for me because my neighborhood where I grew up is right by Griffith Park. There was just always coyotes in our neighborhood. I would just see families of them hanging out at the bottom of the street every night.
I never really encountered coyotes when I lived in New York, but now that I live in the mountains in Connecticut, like I saw one just walking down the sidewalk when I was driving to the gym yesterday. I saw a dead one on the side of the highway. Like coyotes they're here now.
Oh, yeah, they're sad when they're dead, but they're quite cute. And that was a cute one.
They are cute.
Just a little guy. They're just little guys.
Like I'm not scared of coyotes. I know that they could hurt like kids, but I'm not scared of a coyote.
Yeah, they're not good for your cats and stuff, but for people, they're super shy and skittish. They just want your trash.
You can have a little cute coyote. My trash. Little trash puppies.
Yeah.
If raccoons are trash pandas, then coyotes are trash puppies.
They are.
Cuties. All right. Sorry.
Before we get to the very end, which I do want to talk about, can we talk about how Harry finds the helicopter pilot?
This is one of the scenes that I called out as being unintentionally humorous because this place is a fucking nightmare. Oh my God. This gym is insane. It's got neon pink lettering on the outside of a nondescript gray building that says gym.
Yep.
Respect.
That's a clue. Yeah.
And they go in and it's just full of all the 80s caricatures you could think up.
It's all poofed hair and headbands and
leotards.
So first he's going around the gym and there's like, okay, it's 4:30 a.m. I can imagine people running on the track, benching on the Smith machine or whatever. But he goes into the aerobics class and it's a full-on class and the people are decked out, tights, crop tops, headbands, the whole thing.
Leg warmers.
It's full dance regalia. I'm like, man, the 80s were weird, but I didn't know they were quite that weird.
They were all on cocaine. They don't sleep.
I guess not.
I got to go fucking dance this cocaine out of my system or I'm never going to get to bed. Yeah, but then he walks out and there's just one dude doing the lateral raise machine. I found this actor quite charming. Not maybe charming, it's not the right word, quite striking.
Yes.
But I don't know if this makes sense to anyone else, but it makes sense to me. Like, he has the face of a super jacked, muscular dude, but then when he stands up, he's just like slightly more muscular than an average person.
Yeah.
Like, his face looks like he should be like twice the size he is. I don't know why. He's just got like a very pronounced bone structure that makes him look like he's a bigger dude, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, super strong facial features. He also has something that, and I don't want to insult this actor, he has either like scarring on his face or just a really weird setup of his eye sockets and cheekbones, because he has a really intense cheek to the man.
Yes.
And it makes an intense stare. And you will know his face. We should probably put a photo of him in the show notes from one of his classic character actor roles, because it's a face that once you've seen him be a scary bad guy in a movie, you don't forget that face.
Yeah, like he definitely looks like he should have been one of the henchmen in Die Hard, but he wasn't.
Totally that. Or he looks, what's the bad guy at the beginning of Last Action Hero that Tom Noonan is?
Something Ripper?
The Ripper. Was it the Ripper? He looks like Ripper, but his face is naturally, he has Ripper face.
Yeah, you're right. It's kind of like, or like Seal. He has kind of like a Seal thing going on.
Yeah, he has an intense face.
Like White Seal. Let me see. I'm trying to find his name. He's listed as power lifter, so he doesn't get a name.
Okay.
The actor's name is Brian Thompson. He's from Washington. I would have guessed like Austria.
He could play those roles for sure.
But he was just in The Tragedy of Macbeth. He's been in a bunch of stuff.
That's cool that he's still working.
Yeah, he's still getting after it. He was on some shows. He was on a Star Trek. That makes sense.
Okay.
I could see him being on a Star Trek. But yeah, he's a helicopter pilot apparently.
And a super intimidating one, but then they kind of switch it up on you. He turns out to be the good guy because obviously he comes back and tries to save them in the end. And he's like, okay, I'll do this job, but I've got to bring somebody. And it's his boyfriend. And the movie almost presents it like, oh, this is a challenge. Is Harry going to be okay with this? But he's like, yeah, sure, whatever. Let's go.
Yeah, we talked off mic a little about this, but the movie's heart and its politics seem to be in the right place. With regards to these issues that were not always handled well in the 80s, like homosexuality and transgender people, because there is a trans customer at the diner. Unfortunately, I don't believe we get a name, but they're not treated as a curiosity or an outcast or anything. They're part of the crew. It's never really remarked upon, just like the helicopter pilot. And I think his boyfriend's name was Leslie.
Okay.
Because he goes into the dance studio and calls for him.
I see.
It's just treated very matter-of-factly, it was just cool to see.
Yeah.
I don't really have much to say about it except for that, but I was like, whenever there's a trans character or a gay character in an 80s movie, you always hold your breath for a second, like, oh,
that's true.
What's going to happen? Like,
yeah.
And then the movie, to my delight, did not go down that road, thankfully.
Yeah, we got to give Jarnatt credit for that stuff.
Yeah, this is his baby. He wrote and directed it, so
yeah,
he gets the credit and the blame.
And he went out of his way to keep control of it and do it his way, so it's all him.
You got to respect it.
So now we get to criticize him, or I get to, because the end sequence.
No, I'm with you on this.
I felt like, do we need 3 fake out moments where we think our heroes are dead, or like literally gone, and then vaporize them on the 4th try? Like, the missiles keep landing. I was like, they're in the elevator and it's like boom, boom, and the lights go out. I was like, okay, it's over. And they have a long dialogue. And then, oh no, it's 5 minutes have passed. It would just took that long to get to the 27th floor. It's still okay. They're outside. And now, oh, the chopper's gone, but oh, it came back. And oh, another set of missiles blew up, but it didn't blow up the chopper. It just kind of disabled it so that it could slowly sink into the tar pits.
I think the fake outs could have worked if there was more of a happy ending.
Yeah.
But to fake us out that many times and still have them die horribly, like, oh, come on.
3 fake outs and then a miserable death entombed in tar plus wiped out. It's like, we'll be entombed in this tar forever unless a bomb directly hits us and we're vaporized. And then the screen goes white like a bomb did vaporize them.
A little tongue in cheek, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe he was getting silly with it and we didn't give him credit for that.
I'll be honest, like the first time I watched this movie, I zoned out throughout this end sequence.
Okay.
And I had to go back to it in like really pay attention on my second watch, because for me, it's just the least engaging part of the movie.
Yeah.
For a lot of the reasons you already listed. But yeah, it doesn't really work, I think, the movie. And like I said, I'm fine with the bombs being real. I'm fine with them dying, but it felt like they were padding for time a little bit at the end.
Starting from when they just keep separating them and he's like, you go that way and I'll meet you. And she's like, no, it's too dangerous. And he's like, no, you'll be fine.
He gives her an unloaded gun.
Take this gun with no bullets.
And says, just point it.
And then he's immediately proved wrong in a sitcom level bad decision way, where he steps on some guy's roof of his car. And this guy, despite the fact that this guy was pretty self-focused trying to get out of town, now he's made it.
He's the fucking Terminator all of a sudden.
To terminate Harry. He chases him down a sewer to try to kill him.
They're crawling under car. This guy's just got a gun pointed at him. It's fucking insane.
Why?
I mean, I guess he wasn't getting anywhere in traffic. Maybe he's like, the sewers ended up being a good way to get around LA at this time.
That's true. But yeah, maybe he's just going to live out his final road rage fantasy because there's nothing else he can do.
That's how you want to spend your last 20 minutes on Earth, crawling after a stranger into the sewers, trying to shoot him.
Chasing a stranger who dented your hood.
Well, fuck do you care about your car? You shot it. Like,
oh yeah, he immediately shoots through the roof of the car multiple times. It's kind of silly.
It's kind of silly.
But yeah, I had a clear vision of what I wanted somehow. I'm not the movie doctor, but sometimes I play one on this podcast and I'm like, I get it when there's one fake out or there's that like real moment. Okay, it's real. We're in the elevator. The lights go out. We have our heart-to-heart talk. And then it's like, oh, I didn't think we were ever going to make it to the top. We made it to the top. The door's open. The sun is coming up. What a perfect time for them to just be alone on that roof in love, watching the sunrise.
Yeah.
And then it's over.
Give them the Fight Club ending.
Yeah.
But with them dying.
But they decided to make a few more loop-de-loops because I get it. He wanted to bring it around to the beginning, to the tar pits, to the image of dinosaurs entombed in
we didn't talk about the intro where they walk through the evolution of species.
I think that was a real video that would play at that museum at the tar pits. It felt really familiar to me. Yeah.
Yeah. I agree. That ending would have been a little more striking, a little more emotional. And this movie hits the right beats a lot of the time, but I think that's a swing and a miss.
And part of it is that they didn't have the budget to really do the chopper crash very well, so it really grabs your attention how cheesy it is.
Yeah, it would have been cheap to do the ending the way you're describing.
Just put them on the roof, show the contrails of the missiles coming in, and then fade to white.
Why not? All right, well, that's Miracle Mile. Do you want to talk a little bit about where some of these folks went?
Vaporized into the upper atmosphere, I assume.
Well, we know Anthony Edwards and Mare Winningham are happily married, and that just melts my little heart.
That's a pretty nice story to get to break that news right here on the show.
Exactly. So for Jarnatt, this was only his second movie that he'd ever directed. He had directed 1987's Cherry 2000, which I'm not familiar with. And then he would write a 1998 made-for-TV sports film called Future Sport, which sounds fucking hilarious. Listen to this cast. Dean Cain, Vanessa Williams, Wesley Snipes.
Oh, damn.
Directed by Ernest Dickerson. He was Spike Lee's longtime cinematographer.
In
case you were
I didn't know that, yeah.
Yeah.
I imagine this is like a rollerball-esque sci-fi thing.
Yeah. It just breaks my heart, though, because Ernest Dickerson directed Juice. And now he's doing Future Sport on TV. But what can you do? And then so Stephen Jarnatt would go on to just basically work in TV, directing, writing. He directed a bunch of episodes of The Lizzie McGuire Show, directed a few episodes of ER when Anthony Edwards is on there.
Oh.
Nash Bridges, stuff like that. He hasn't written anything since Future Sport, and he hasn't directed anything since 2006. So I think he's kind of hung it up.
Okay.
Didn't have a great career, but seemed to have steady work.
Yeah.
He was not a superstar, but that's not for everybody.
No.
Let's talk about Anthony Edwards a little bit.
Yeah.
Goose, if you will. We mentioned in this monologue that he's probably best known for Goose. But now I'd say he's probably best known for his role on ER. He was on there for 8 seasons.
That was pretty big. And that was a time when the top echelon of network TV was the monoculture. That was the biggest thing in the country was ER.
Yeah, it was him and Clooney, right? Were the two big stars on there? I never really watched ER. It was a little before my time, but it was kind of like the first prestige show in a way, right?
It has that vibe. It was smartly written, more sophisticated than the previous generation. It was breaking away from the old school Marcus Welby, MD, hospital shows of a bygone era, grittier stories and characters.
Even though it was more of like a case of the week thing, I think there was like an overarching storyline, which has become associated with like prestige TV in a sense.
Yeah, I think you're right.
So Anthony Edwards, he's been super active in TV. He's been in stuff like 0 Hour, Girls, Billions, Law and Order, True Crime, Inventing Anna, Designated Survivor, and We Crashed.
Oh yeah, that keeps coming up.
Yeah, he was a big role in We Crashed. I watched that and enjoyed it. I enjoyed it a lot more than Supercharged, dog shit ass fucking Uber story. story.
Oh,
I fucking hate that show. That was so boring. But it's not to say that Anthony Edwards has not been in any movies. He's actually in next week's movie
oh,
in a pretty big role.
wow.
He plays Mark Ruffalo's partner in ZODIAC,
I forgot that.
the one who always gives him food and sandwiches and things. So we're going to get to see him again next week.
That's a new trick we do. We do like
Yeah.
string the movies together with a common actor.
I bet we can make that work for a while. Not for the specialty months, for
No.
the random ones.
Yeah.
And of course, like we mentioned, he eloped with Mare Winningham in 2021. And she's been super active too. So she's been on 4 seasons of American Horror Story. I know they all have subtitles, but I don't know them because I don't watch that show.
Yeah, I don't either.
She was on The Affair, which keeps coming up too.
A lot of people following us around from that show.
She was in The Outsider, which I forgot, but we both enjoyed The Outsider.
Oh, I really like The Outsider. I forgot she was in that too.
Dope Sick, which was the new Hulu show about the opioid crisis. She was on Grey's Anatomy. I think she actually played Meredith's mom in the early seasons. And she even popped up on some ER while Anthony Edwards and Stephen Jarnatt were there.
So they're looping back around after a long time
little
working
dance
together,
they
knowing
did.
each other.
Yeah. So this movie, those are the only 2 people. I feel like those are the 2 stars of the movie by
Yeah.
far. It's the only 2 people I really researched for this. But fun tidbit, this movie came out the same day as Roadhouse.
Oh, interesting.
So I wonder if that had anything to do with
Interesting context just to imagine those two in theaters at the same time. It's always fun.
So was there anything left unsaid that you wanted to go over, or you feel like we gave it a good run?
We gave it a good run. I don't know where I end up on this film because talking through all the faults, I'm like, yeah, you messed all this stuff up. But then I found plenty of things that are like, this was cool. That was cool. I think it's definitely a movie that I would recommend for people. You have to be in the mood to just watch an 80s movie.
Yeah.
But if you're in that, like, it's fun.
Outside of the gym scene, I didn't really feel like this movie was anachronistic in a lot of ways. Obviously, Harry dresses kind of goofy, but you get the sense that he would have dressed goofy in any era.
It's not too stereotypical, but thankfully, the threat of nuclear war is not gone, but it's in a different flavor these days.
Yeah, we're more concerned about the 15 other crises happening at any given moment.
It's hard to juggle them all, man. Thank God we have smartphones that keep us informed on every single bad thing in the world at all times.
There can't be any psychological downsides to just scrolling through the worst news in human history every 10 minutes.
It's making us superhumans.
So I guess I dropped the bomb that next week we're doing one of my 3 favorite movies ever.
Oh, wow. Way up there. Okay.
Probably my favorite movie that qualifies for the podcast.
This is big.
So-
I better get serious.
I had this one circled for a long time, and we were talking about what we wanted to do next week. You were just telling me that you've been kind of speed running the Fincher filmography.
If 24 months is a speed run.
I hope you find time to check out Mindhunter in that stretch as well, because
Oh, okay.
he directed all of the first season at least.
I dabbled in that show, so I saw enough of it to get the flavor.
Okay. But yeah, we're doing ZODIAC, which feels like a spiritual predecessor to Mindhunter.
Sure.
It's just a masterpiece, one of my favorite movies. It's not a comforting movie, but I will put it on when I don't know what else to watch because I'm just like, I know it'll entertain me, even though it'll terrify me to some extent.
Yes, it's very unsettling. I've seen it one time purely at your recommendation, and I was suitably impressed. So I'm thrilled to get to go back to it and do a deeper dive.
I haven't watched it in a couple of years, so I'm excited I might watch it right after we finish recording this, like started at least.
Cool.
Because I love it that much. And thank you guys so much for listening. Please remember to rate, review, subscribe to the pod. You can find us on Twitter at BlastZonePod. You could find us on email, blastzonepod@gmail.com. Send us any recommendations, feedback, criticism, movie suggestions, anything you want to talk to us about.
Yeah, we'd love to hear from you.
So thanks so much for listening. We'll see you next time in the Blast Zone.
See you next time in the Blast Zone.
The Blast Zone.